Either going up and down the road to Sydney as she gets jobs down there, or going straight west and camping. My concept is the Australian landscape, and coming from New Zealand, where I grew up, where the land is very in-your-face, beautiful, with its coverings of mountains and plants and ocean, Australia just blows me away because of its subtlety and its immensity, and the colours. It's just incredible. And the feeling of timelessness of the land is very liberating and gives me a sense of my place in the scheme of things. I prefer to work with fabric, well, with textiles, and I use silk for this exhibition, partly because of the sheen on the threads as they hit the light, especially with some silks. I've used a variety of silks in the exhibition. Printing ink, and I've also used, and that's a pigment, so it doesn't have the same light reflecting qualities as dyes. The colours and textures are chosen with the feel of a specific place or observation in mind. When I first thought of the idea of using silks to express the feel of the land, I wanted to use only recycled silks left over from other projects, and I did use some too, but I found I needed to paint and print pieces individually for different places because they had specific feels about them, and it sometimes took a lot of work to get the right, or for me to be satisfied with what I got. The black and white strips, printed patterns, are structured to keep the colours and textures together and also represent underneath the surface of the land. I used a variety of dye techniques to ensure to texture the pieces, like shibori, tie-dye, water spots and salt, as well as screen and block printing. And I used a variety of silks too, from habitat to satin silk to lens to you name it. I like experimenting with different silks and dyes. The impression of passing through the landscape leaves little room for detail, and when I look at the colours and patterns of Australia from the air or from the ground, I find I visualise them in fabric and dye rather than canvas and paint. So, if I speak about individual ones, like this one's done on a mixture of silks and a mixture of dye techniques from tie-dye to screen printing. And I was thinking from looking down from a plane, some of what you see is very, well, it's very painterly and it's very sort of structured too in a way, so I was sort of trying for that in this one. With some of the blues, being a bit of a watery person, I just find they really sort of, I love them. And there's a variety of techniques here, from shibori to salt techniques to sewn bits and also printed bits to try and make a sort of a reflection, sort of water reflections. Well, tropical rainforest, I mean, everyone's been to Paluma. And the colours are quite vibrant there, but very subtle at the same time. Again, screen printed and dyed. And here we have, when you leave Australia, when you fly across for hours and hours, and you finally get to the sea, and the edge is very light blue, and it starts to get these subtle dark streaks through it, and they get darker and darker, and the blue and more, and the lighter blue gets less and less, and then you come across to, I think the first place you come to is Bali or somewhere, and it reverses again, and I was trying to get the subtleties of that. The first time we went overseas, I was completely blown away. I was squatting on the arm of the seat, looking out the window. Gabriel was feeling sick, and I was saying, oh, look, this girl has It was really, you know, and it was just wonderful. It's enough to make you stay up in a plane forever, I think, just looking down. One or two of the others, when you go out west, some of the colours, the reds of the road to Gundabuka or some of the other out west places are just wonderful too. So I was trying for that, and there's only so many reds you can really put together. It's hard. And we went to Girrawin, which is a national park down towards the border, and it was early in the morning, and well, it was wildflower time too, so I was quite ecstatic, of course, because again, not only do I do this, I'm an awfully keen gardener, but the ripples on the water there were so still, and everything was very much like that. So I tried very hard to well, you know, to give my version of it. Yeah, and the only other one I'll talk about is this one, which we went to Currawinya, and again, they have we went for a walk there, and they have these crazy rocks that you don't really climb up, but you sort of observe, and they are really very much that colour. And when I did that piece, it was at a workshop with Linda Jackson here, and I was thinking of them when I did it, so that's what that one's about. So, any questions?
I have a question. You were talking about the different techniques. What's this one here?
That's screen printing.
Okay, that's screen printing. And this here?
That's very carefully placing little dots of colour.
Yep.
And this is a satin silk, so it has a completely different reaction to everything from a habitat or a silk twill. So some silks I can get that on and others I can't.
Yep.
So that's
Yeah, I tried different techniques. Yeah, well, it's fairly invisible. If you look at the back, it's not. I tried different techniques. I tried that Isofix or whatever it is that but it just looked so flat. I thought, no, can't do that. So I got myself a frame, and I sat there for. Once I got one sorted out, I'd sit there and do it, and be started on the next one. You know, so I'd work from one to another.
So you're sewing all the strips together first, and then
no, that's going straight onto the back. I would put my piece of black backing down and rip the strips in the colour I wanted, and then I'd place them and pin them. Then I'd put it on my frame. No, first of all I'd hang it up and yeah, that looks all right. No, that's terrible. You know, and then I'd put it on my frame and sew. Thank you. I got a lot of, there's blood on them. I've been working on them for about 8 months, or a year really, because I actually started the whole thing probably the year before last when I was doing Photoshop at TAFE, and I started, I don't know who knows Photoshop here, but it's fabulous. And I started doing stuff like this in Photoshop, just working it out, proportions and colours and things. And I thought, nuts, I don't want to do it like this. I pulled out my silks. And I had a lot of silks left over from making things previously, so You know, it wasn't too, and then I had to, of course, well, like that one that I did it. It was actually a scarf at Linda Jackson's workshop. And when I got home, I decided to use it. I ripped it up into strips and reorganised them so it worked.
So do you use like a resist, like wax or anything?
I haven't used any wax. No, but I like working with wax. But you have to boil it out. Yeah. Whereas with the silk, to make the colour stay, with all of them you have to steam it in. And that's probably the most, not boring bit.
Is there any significance in the background?
Pardon?
Is there any significance in the background?
In the black?
Yeah. Have you tried other colours?
No, I haven't tried other colours. I was thinking of trying a sort of a really brown, a dark really brown, but I thought, well, I'll stick with the black for this one. And try something else as well.
That has a nice consistency.
Thank you. So, any more questions or?
Yes. Can you tell me where you got your inspiration for that one?
For this one? What do I call it? Again, looking down from up there, looking down at the land below, you know, from the plane. I think you're about 30 or 60. How far out are you?
Any particular spot?
No, that's not any particular spot. That's just flying over. I do take photographs from up there, but I'm not wonderful at taking them yet. And I did see an exhibition in Sydney about a few months ago where some fellow was taking the same sort of photographs. But here apparently a private plane and it's flying much lower and they were incredibly beautiful. But they had similar sort of effects. Not the screen printing, but you know, these sort of effects.
That would design in the centre of
Yeah.
And looking down that.
Well, you get sort of filigree patterns and things when you're looking down too. It's just beautiful. So, not being an Australian native, but coming from New Zealand, this is much more beautiful, much more subtle, much more beautiful.
It seems to me that the people love the West.
I think it could be very intimidating, very daunting, but at the same time, it really gives you a feel of your place in the scheme of things, that really nothing is very important and everything goes on and on regardless. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.